Traditional women's ceremonies like moon lodges or red tents honored the importance of stillness and this interconnection. And I'm really seeing now within my own local community that more and more groups of women are gathering once again to create ceremony and sisterhood circles. This is our medicine. This is the way we'll heal our communities and heal one another.
Hey there, this is Women on the Brink. I'm your host, Chris Jeffrey, a registered acupuncturist and wellness advisor with a passion for helping women live happier and more balanced lives. When I'm away from work, I'm usually outside in nature, either walking the seawall or I'm hiking in the mountains. And like many of you, my life has been filled with moments of hardship, some that I thought I couldn't overcome and really left me questioning my own strength. But through these challenges, I discovered resilience, courage, and a renewed sense of purpose. So I'm here to share not just my journey, but the lessons I've learned, and to remind you that no matter what obstacles come your way, there's always a path forward. And just to let you know, this podcast is not prescriptive. It's an offering. So please take what resonates with you and leave the rest.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Women on the Brink. Today, we're going to talk about intuition through the eyes and wisdom of Indigenous women. And because this is the case, I just want to acknowledge that while I'm recording this, I'm on the unceded territory of the Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish nations. Indigenous Chris. My name is Chris, and I am from the Treaty 1 territory, also known as Winnipeg in Manitoba. My ancestors are Métis Ojibwe and mixed European. And the reason I've chosen to discuss intuition from an Indigenous perspective is because intuition is a sacred gift. It's a connection to spirit, to land, and ancestral knowledge. You know, women's intuition is often described as a deep, instinctive knowing that, transcends logic. And what makes it unique is a combination of biology, social conditioning, and lived experience. It's often dismissed in modern society, but when it's honored and developed, it becomes one of the most powerful forms of guidance. So, have you or anyone you know experienced moments like this? So, let's be real. Intuition isn't some mystical power or an exclusive gift that's reserved for a select few. It's something that we all have. We just need to tap into it. So, from a scientific and biological perspective, we women have a larger corpus callosum, which is the bridge between the brain's left logical hemisphere and the right intuitive and emotional hemisphere. And this allows for faster integration of rational thought and gut feeling. Women also have higher levels of oxytocin. Remember, we talked about that before, that bonding hormone that enhances sensitivity to social cues. This allows women to be more attuned to micro expressions, which are those little nuances, and more tuned into voice tone and unspoken emotions in others, which are more subtle ways of communication. And still, from a biological scope, hormonal cycles really influence perception and sensitivity. So lots of women will experience heightened intuition at certain phases of their menstrual cycle. And from a historical perspective, women have traditionally been the caregivers and the community connectors. And these skills require a keen perception of other people's emotions and of danger and of group dynamics for survival. So in many Indigenous and traditional cultures, women were seen as the keepers of wisdom and trusted for their ability to sense shifts in energy and foresee outcomes. Ooh, I love that. So our intuition is not magic. It's a deeply refined ability to sense and process and trust information beyond the obvious. And when it's nurtured and honored, it becomes a powerful tool for navigating life. And this is because when women trust their intuition, they make aligned decisions, they set boundaries, and recognize red flags before things even go wrong. It helps them tune into their higher self, guiding them towards authentic choices in their relationships, in their careers, and journeys toward personal growth. Some Indigenous cultures believe that intuition is a gift passed down from ancestors and not just an individual ability, but instead it's like this way of listening to the wisdom of those who came before. So an elder might say that when you ignore your intuition, you're ignoring the voices of those who walked before you. And dreams and visions and signs from nature are all considered messages from the ancestors, guiding people on their path. I recently had a dream where I saw a broken car mirror on the passenger side of my car. And at first I thought about looking up, the symbolism of a broken mirror, because often our dreams are metaphors for something else. But a week later, I was T-boned in a car accident and the driver's window and mirror were completely shattered. Was this a coincidence? I mean, I don't think so, because once I do start paying attention to my dreams and to my hunches and those prickles that go up my spine when I sense danger, I really see how this intuition is a protective mechanism trying to get me to pay attention. And Indigenous people have always learned by observing nature, by tracking animals, reading, the wind, sensing changes before it comes. And this listening to the land really sharpens intuition. So, what the birds, the water, and trees tell us when we pay attention. I have to admit, as a Métis woman, I'm pretty good at feeling when the weather is changing. And I'm also really good at spotting animals in the wild that other people might not see right away. Those truly are my gifts, but I'm afraid I didn't inherit a great sense of direction, and I often get turned around when I'm out hiking in the forest, and I'm the leader of a hiking group. The other thing I'm not good at is paddling in a canoe. I remember when we went camping beside a lake with another family when my kids were really young. One morning I went canoeing with the other dad and a couple of the kids, and I was at the front of the canoe and he was steering at the back and the kids were all in the middle of the canoe. And we got out into the middle of the lake and, my paddling was making us go around in circles and circles. It was really frustrating for me, but both of us were laughing so hard because, I just couldn't give up the control of letting him do the steering. Anyway, he stops paddling and he says to me, "What kind of Indian are you anyway?" And here's one of the things I love about Indigenous cultures. Everything is viewed as having a spirit. And by being in tune with that spirit, we strengthen our intuition. When I took my Indigenous doula course last year, there was a young woman sitting beside my daughter and I who was quietly weaving on that first day. And then on the second day, I noticed that a beautiful basket was taking form. And so I said to her, "You've been weaving that basket throughout this entire course this weekend." And she said, "Yeah, all of our stories that we've shared in this classroom over the past 2 days have been woven into this basket." And this was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever heard. It resonated so deeply with me because this basket now had a spirit, because it was intentionally crafted to have our pain and our joy woven through the birch bark. And all of us women in this course had been very transparent and vulnerable. We were sharing life stories about our births and we really felt this deep connection to one another. And my takeaway was this: when women gather, intuition is amplified, whether it's a sacred ceremony, a sisterhood circle, or just simply a deep conversation over tea. These communal spaces allow women to reconnect with their inner knowing and to affirm that we're not alone in what we feel and sense and know, right? So this is so important for us to recognize because colonization and a patriarchal system has attempted to erase Indigenous ways of knowing and replace them with Western values. And I have to say, this hasn't turned out for most of us women, whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. So when women relearn to trust our intuition and listen to our body and our dreams and our spirit, we can all reclaim our feminine identity. Stay with us after the break. We're going to reconnect to our intuition or hone it even further if you've already tapped in.
Join us on our website for articles from our podcasts at www.womenonthebrink.net. There you'll find extra tools that can be used to raise self-awareness and build resilience. We want to make this experience as interactive as possible for you Brinkers. So join the forums, introduce yourself, and share your stories.
Now, because of my background in traditional Chinese medicine, I see everything as energy. And I also see most things from the philosophy of yin and yang. And yin energy is this receptive, intuitive, and flowing. It represents the moon and stillness and the unseen. And yang energy is active and logical and forceful. And it represents the sun and movement and outward expression. And both are necessary for balance. Honing intuition, though, is yin in nature because it is deeply connected to receptivity and stillness and inner wisdom. Yin energy is about receiving rather than forcing something to happen. And it allows information and emotions and insights to flow naturally. So intuition comes when we are open and listening and not when we're actively trying to control or intellectualize a situation. It's kind of like when the moon reflects on light. It doesn't create anything, but it reveals. In a world that values so much yang energy, which is the doing and logic and productivity side of things, intuition requires us to slow down and pause and feel. So practices like meditation and rest and solitude strengthen intuition because they allow us to hear the subtle messages within. Traditional women's ceremonies like moon lodges or red tents honored the importance of stillness and this inner connection. And I'm really seeing now within my own local community that more and more groups of women are gathering once again to create ceremony and sisterhood circles. This is our medicine. This is the way we'll heal our communities and heal one another. Because yin energy is associated with the unseen and the subconscious and the mysteries of life, these are the precise areas where intuition thrives. We need to learn to tap in. So instead of seeking answers outside, yin intuition asks us to turn inward and trust what we feel. And yin energy moves much like water, so it adapts and senses without resistance. So intuition isn't something you figure out with logic. It's something that you allow to surface and trust. The more we let go and surrender, the stronger our intuitive clarity becomes. So let's talk about how to cultivate your intuition. So the first thing is just slow down and create space for reflection and silence and rest. So many of my patients say they can't meditate or they find it, too big of an obstacle to get into that space of reflection. So I just tell them, start small, like turn off your devices and sit in nature and learn to rest and calm your mind, even if it's only for 5 minutes at a time. And another thing to do is to connect with water. In many Indigenous cultures, women are closely associated with water because this is the lifeblood of Mother Earth. So things like bathing and swimming or even drinking tea mindfully can help unlock this yin wisdom. When my family and I went to Manitoba for a moon dance on my aunt's land a couple of years ago, the first thing a group of elders did was take us girls down to the lake and sing a water song with us. And it was so moving for me that it actually brought me to tears. And I think part of it was the fact that this was such a part of me that hadn't been cultivated and nurtured. The other thing is trust first impressions, because yin intuition is often instant and subtle before the mind has had a chance to interfere. So in my practice, I offer a type of acupuncture to my patients called esoteric acupuncture, and it helps to clear these subtle energies within the chakra system. And it's very similar to hypnotherapy, where images or colors or symbols will appear during the treatment. And the patients are asked not to question or analyze what comes up, but instead to just go with it. Again, there's often huge insights that come from these really subtle messages, as long as we're listening and we're open to receiving them. And another thing is to work with your dreams. Write them down, sit with their messages, and notice any recurring symbols. Like if you wake up with a strong feeling, don't dismiss it, sit with it. One morning I woke up thinking about my son-in-law. He had made a big decision to change jobs, and I had forgotten to follow up to see how the news was received by his employer. So later on the same day as when I woke up thinking about him and his situation, I asked my daughter, who's his wife, how it went with him handing in his resignation a couple of weeks ago. Because I told her, I said, I woke up that morning thinking of him. And she said, "Mom, he just handed his resignation in this morning." I was a little taken aback that I had really tuned into him and then received that affirmation from my daughter later in the day. And honor your cycles. Like, notice how intuition shifts with the moon or seasons or your menstrual cycle if you still have one. If you talk to a nurse or a policeman, they'll tell you that during a full moon, way more stuff happens out there. And listen to your body, because intuition speaks through the body. It might be a tightness in the chest. It could be a deep knowing in the gut or goosebumps on your skin. So next time you face a big decision, just pause and check in. Does your body lean toward it, or does it shrink away? And where do you sense it? And of course, spend time with other intuitive and trusted women. When we women come together, intuition is strengthened, especially when these groups are affirming of one another. Many years ago, I belonged to a group of 4 women. We used to call ourselves the WOWs, which was an acronym for Women of Wisdom. And we met quite regularly to develop our spirituality and work together on personal growth. And we joined classes on psychic development and read books on manifestation and shared lots of really great fun experiences as a result of that alliance. But I'm telling you, if it wasn't the year 2010, we could have been burned at the stake for what we were cultivating. And here's the most important part: trust. What I've learned about intuition is that the more you trust your intuition, the louder it becomes. The more you act on your inner knowing, the stronger it gets. The more you honor your yin nature, the more it will guide you back to yourself. So as we close this episode, I invite you to reflect. When was the last time you trusted your intuition? And when was the last time you ignored it and later realized it was right all along? We live in a world that tells us to move fast and analyze everything and seek answers outside of ourselves. But deep wisdom lives in the body, in stillness, and in the quiet places we're sometimes afraid to enter. So when we reclaim our yin nature, it's actually an act of deep remembering, of trusting that we don't have to force the answers, that they'll just come. It's a knowing that we don't have to prove anything. Our knowing is enough. So this week, I invite you to practice just one thing. Slow down, listen, and trust what arises. And I want to thank you for honoring the wisdom within you. So until the next time, stay present, stay open, and stay connected to your deep, quiet knowing.
Thanks for joining. And I want you to know that this isn't just a podcast. This is a movement. So share this information with your friends and let's go, ladies.